Hello, Ritter School families. This is Mr. Peters, principal of the Caroline Ritter School. Hard to believe that we're at that point of the year already where we are preparing for our sixth grade end of the year activities and our annual tradition of the sixth grade field trip. That field trip is going to be occurring before we know it on Monday, April 10th of this year. I've prepared this presentation for you in order to serve as a guide for our annual field trip. So Thursday, April 10th will be the date of the field trip. It is a very early start. We ask that everybody arrive here by 5:30 a.m. at Ritter School. We'll actually open up our doors around 5 o'clock that morning so that you do a real quick Wawa stop, get something to eat for the way to Washington, D.C., but definitely make sure that you get here by 5:30. You will be going to the homeroom that is assigned for your particular bus. We are very fortunate that we have 8 charter buses this year with 8 home rooms. So unless your child for some reason has swapped home rooms, everybody will be going to their respective home room in order to take attendance and then be prepared to board the buses. We will have some extra parking that particular day as long as it is not too muddy outside with some rainfall beforehand. We will have our custodian escorting all individuals that are chaperoning on this trip to park in front of the parking lot over on the grass near the solar panels. Once again, once you come into the building, we ask that you go directly to your child's home room. Attendance will be taken, and then the bathrooms will also be available for your use in the sixth grade wing. We will start boarding the buses right when they get here. The buses should arrive to our school around 5:45. So once attendance has been taken in the homerooms, we'll send you outside. Once we have everybody accounted for, we'll be heading out. We have an anticipated departure of 6 a.m. in order to head out on the field trip. And at 6 a.m. sharp. So unfortunately, if you are not here by that time, we will unfortunately leave without you. We are expecting a nonstop trip all the way to Washington, D.C. Each bus is equipped with a bathroom, so there will be no need for a rest stop break. The teachers that will be chaperoning each particular bus will have conversations with their students prior to the trip in order to discuss some mutual video options that can be played both to and from Washington, D.C. Parents, we ask that you be mindful when interacting with students. You will possibly be asked to lead a small group or chaperone one other child other than your own during the course of the trip. Please keep in mind, whether you're chaperoning somebody else's child or even your own, please never leave a student unattended. We need you. We are relying on you to make sure that we have adequate supervision on this trip. It is a fun day. It's a very exciting day, a unique opportunity. Many of our students have never been to Washington, D.C. However, please keep in mind, it is a city. And no matter whether you're in a rural or urban area, we need to be mindful of our surroundings, especially with, just crossing traffic. Our students are not as accustomed to crossing traffic in a city area, especially with crosswalks and looking for signs and watching for vehicles and so forth, especially living in such a rural area. So please make sure that we are safe at all points and also accounted for at all points. We're going to be going through most likely a lot of different museums, a lot of nooks and crannies within these museums. Make sure that you have eyes on the students that you're chaperoning at all times. Students will be able to go to public restrooms. We prefer that they go with another individual, whether it be, the adults of the same gender or at least another student. But please be aware of adults who appear to be lingering around. We really need you to have good eyesight as far as possible issues that could occur. Like I said, we're going to a city environment, very different than the environment in which we live. And we do need to be very mindful of potential hazards that could be there. When interacting with students, please try to make sure that each student has an equitable opportunity, especially if you're chaperoning a child other than your own. And this would include, the purchasing of items, or if you go in and have to pay to go into one of these different museums, just make sure that that other child has a positive, fair experience. Um, Follow any procedures that might be set forth by your child's teacher. Keep in mind that although I am attending the trip as well, I'll be located on one of the 8 buses. Your child's homeroom teacher, or the teacher there that is in charge of that particular bus, is truly acting on my behalf. They are in charge of the trip. So each bus is independent of one another. And please follow the directions set forth by the teacher that is there chaperoning that particular bus. We also ask that, especially if you're with another child other than your own, please do not conduct personal or business conversations over the phone. Let's keep in mind that this is a fun, unique educational opportunity for the children, especially visiting so many unique spots here within Washington, D.C. Let's keep that attentive on our minds and not necessarily other personal items. Timelines are also crucial, both from what I stated about getting here directly around 5:30, the sharp leaving at 6 o'clock, and also our dismissal time. We do need you present at 4:30 in order for us to start loading the buses. So please follow the timeframes. We ask that you stay within the mall and museum area within Washington, D.C. There are so many things to do within just the mall and museum area. Know going in that you should have more of a plan, kind of pre-identify. I really encourage that you speak with your child to see what interests they have. Take a look at some of the maps that can be found online of Washington, D.C., of the Smithsonian museums, and even the other museums that are around, and really kind of have a plan of action going into the day. I've always found that it is beneficial for our students to have that conversation beforehand about what they want to go see, rather than decide the minute you get there. We are there for the full day, but it's only so much time. In Washington, D.C., there is so much to do and see. You really want to make sure that you have a good plan of action going into this. If there are any issues, any emergencies, problems, please contact me. My phone number is going to be provided to each one of you attending the trip. So feel free to give me a call if you are lost, if there's a problem, if there's an emergency, if you're confused or just want to double check something. I will be reachable throughout the course of the day. Depending on traffic, we are expecting to get to Washington, D.C. around 9:30. Now, we will be dropping everybody off at around the Lincoln Memorial. So that's pretty much all the way at one far end of the mall, as they refer to it there in Washington, D.C. Now, around the Lincoln Memorial, obviously you have that memorial, but you also do have some close access as far as proximity to a few other memorials over in that region. A lot of students wind up seeing at least the Lincoln Memorial and maybe a couple other items along the way. Now, on the way to the actual National Mall and really the Smithsonian Museum area, I know some students do definitely check out the World War II Memorial. You also will pass by the Washington Monument. If you kind of navigate a little bit off track, you can take a peek at the White House. And then everybody basically winds up over in the museum area. You'll see 2 stars on this particular map. The star all the way on your left, underneath where it says the National Mall, that star is indicating where you'll be dropped off. That's the Lincoln Memorial. And please note that you will be getting picked up at a different spot than where you get dropped off. So we will get picked up on the Jefferson Drive location for the Smithsonian Castle. Very unique building. It literally looks like a castle, so it's very easy to identify, but it is a different spot than where we get dropped off. The whole idea is we get dropped off on one end of the mall and we kind of navigate towards the other end of the mall. Over the years of doing this trip, we've realized that that is the easiest for everybody, especially as far as walking. If you mistake this and head back to the Lincoln Memorial, it is a very far walk, especially if you are, don't have much time in order to get back over to the Smithsonian Castle. So please navigate towards the museum area where the Smithsonian museums are located, um, in order to make sure that you are at the Smithsonian Castle for 4:30. Lincoln Memorial, very moving monument, obviously here of President Lincoln. You do right away see President Lincoln there. It's a nice 19-foot tall monument of President Lincoln. You can see different famous speeches from President Lincoln that are carved into each wall. That would include the Gettysburg Address, his second inaugural address. So a lot of interesting aspects here with the Lincoln Memorial. Other memorials that you might see along the way, you have the Vietnam Veterans Memorial, the World War II Memorial, that's right there at the end of the reflecting pool. And then you eventually lead into the museum area. Next two slides, I just have a quick picture here of some of the different Smithsonian museums. I find that a lot of students, it's very popular for them to attend the Museum of American History, definitely the Air and Space Museum, the Museum of Natural History, are also some very popular museums. But there are plenty of others, as you can see. And these are just the Smithsonian museums. There are also museums that are available, such as, say, the National Artifacts, that are run through the federal government. So please take some time prior to the trip, really look around and see what interests you and your child might have. Something you also need to keep in mind, although many of these museums are free, some of the museums, and I have indicated here the Air and Space Museum, you need to get tickets ahead of time. And a lot of times these are timed tickets. So Air and Space Museum, for example, it's a free ticket. However, you need to go online now in order to get that ticket, especially with the time frame that you would desire to get to the Air and Space Museum. Now, I would suggest, especially if you're looking at, say, let's getting the Air and Space Museum, do not get a ticket for 9 or 10 o'clock. It's going to be very, very difficult being dropped off around 9:30 at the Lincoln Memorial. And you are literally going all the way across on the other side of the mall. It's at least a 20-minute walk if you're moving quickly to get from the Lincoln Memorial to the Air and Space Museum. So I would definitely encourage you to look at tickets 11 o'clock or after, especially if they're timed. This way you can make sure that you can get there. And, barring any traffic incidents or just purely just walking over, you're not going to run into any issues. Hours for the museums are pretty common, mostly 10 to 5:30. That's why you kind of see where we have as far as the time frame of this trip. We are definitely there throughout, the operating hours with these different museums. The memorials do open a hair earlier. Another reason why we drop you off at the Lincoln Memorial, we are going to be arriving pretty much right at their opening. So you'll be able to go hit up the memorials first and then transition over to the museums. Meals are on your own throughout the course of the trip. You are allowed to eat on the charter buses. Now, we do ask that you don't bring anything that is glass. We don't want to see anything fall, breakage of glass, and it leads into other issues. So keep in mind that you can bring food on the way to Washington, D.C. I know myself, I wind up having a prepared snack that I can eat on the way to D.C. I also have some extra items that I can eat while coming back from DC. Some families, speaking with students over the years, they wind up having a lunch and a very early dinner prior to heading back. Myself, I like having a late lunch, kind of hold you over from eating some snacks on the way down to DC. It allows me to maximize my time a little bit more while touring the different museums during the course of the day. And there's really a variety of different places that you can eat. That's something else that you might want to think of. Not necessarily, book a reservation somewhere but definitely have a few ideas in your mind, at least what type of meal you would like, if not some possible locations. You might not necessarily know where on the National Mall you might be or which museum you might be at which given time. As I mentioned, a variety of different locations. You can eat anywhere from going to a McDonald's. There are street vendors all over the place, especially outside the museums. Some of these Smithsonian museums actually have cafeterias. For instance, the American History Museum, Natural History Museum, I know the Native American Museum have some very nice cafeterias inside. And then there are also plenty of restaurants around and really right within that National Mall area. So speak with your child. Definitely kind of think, what type of food do we think we might want to eat that day? Do we want to sit down, which takes a little bit longer, or do we want to eat like, let's say, a museum uh, lunch where it can be, combined along with the museum visit? So definitely a good conversation to have. Now, with that, food is going to cost some money. You are in a city environment, typically spending a little bit more money. The prices are more inflated than just eating around here in Franklin Township. So definitely make sure that you bring some money along. Some places are a little bit more cashless. However, especially if you are eating with the vendors outside the museums, they do take cash. So definitely a good idea to budget some money. Also, keep in mind any money that you might need for incidentals during the course of the day, and any money that you might need for any souvenirs. Each museum has their own museum shop. There are also plenty of street vendors and other stores along the way. So very typical that we see the students getting some sort of souvenir as they go across their trip for the course of the day. You will not have access to the buses during your DC trip. So once you get to DC and get dropped off at 9:30 outside the Lincoln Memorial, you're not going to have access. You might not even see that bus again until 4:30 when they arrive to pick us up over at the Smithsonian Castle. So whatever you take during the day, you're going to have to carry throughout the course of the day. And if you leave something on the bus, you're not going to be able to access it until 4:30 when we're ready to go back to school. Please wear comfortable clothes and shoes. You're going to do a lot of walking over the course of this trip. So very important that you are comfortable yourself. Be prepared for any kind of weather. At the time of the year that we're going in, it might be a little bit chilly right when we first get there. But then you might need to take off that jacket because I'm hoping it's going to be a nice, beautiful, sunny day and nice and seasonably warm out. So we'll hope that there's no inclement weather, but we are going rain, shine, no matter what it is. So be prepared for any type of weather. Students are permitted to bring their phones, camera, whatever personal belongings. Just keep in mind you are going to carry it throughout the day. Also keep in mind that going through all these different museums, you are going to be going through metal detectors, security screening. So the more you bring, the more you might have to go through and get searched when going through those security screenings. So just keep that in mind as well. Myself, I usually like bringing a hat. Not only is it protecting my head with the sun, but I also can throw in anything from my pockets that I have to take out during the course of these screenings, because you're going in and out of the museum so often. I kind of put it all in my hat, so this way it's all located in one spot. Just a little tidbit that you might want to use for yourself. National Mall is quite vast. Like I said, a lot of walking during the course of the day. You can see just from this map, there are so many things to see and do. Really talk with your child, prioritize, have that list of these are the must-dos, and these are some maybes over the course of the day if we have some extra time. I do have on this map, you see number 33 there, indicated as the start. That is the Lincoln Memorial. And in number 27, you see the word end. That is where we are getting picked up. And it is going to be on the mall side of the Smithsonian Castle. So students will stay with their chaperones that are assigned to them at all times. Parents, you can team up. You can definitely, it's usually easier to team up with other students, parents of the same homeroom. We are all leaving from Ritter. However, some buses might navigate in different directions to get down to DC. Some might get held up at a way station. Some might get held up just because of traffic or going a different way on the way down. So yes, it is possible to team up with somebody from a different homeroom. However, they might not get to DC at the same time as you. So please have some provisions and understandings in place if you do want to team up with somebody from a different homeroom, that might not be logistically possible or very feasible, at least from the onset of the trip. Any emergencies, call 911. Then please call me on my district cell phone. I have that listed, 856-207-4078. Chaperones, I would suggest, I do this myself, setting your alarms for 4 p.m. This way, no matter where you're at, it gives you enough time to get to the Smithsonian Castle at 4:30. The buses, our goal is to leave at 5. Now, if everybody's accounted for and it's 4:45, your bus is there, you've boarded it, we're sending you back. We will leave on a rolling basis. So that's why it's so important that you get there for 4:30 outside the Smithsonian Castle. And once you get there, we ask that you identify with your homeroom teacher, the teacher that's chaperoning your particular bus, and then that person will guide you onto wherever your bus parks. Those who went down to DC on a bus must come back to DC on a bus. We don't want anybody just wandering off and, oh, well, their parents meeting us up down here and they're just taking us home. We're accounted for, okay? We have to account for every person, both the adults and the students on this trip. We need to know where everybody's at. We need to be able to have accountability for everybody come 4:30 when we ask that you report to the Smithsonian Castle. So once again, very important, 4:30, meeting up outside the mall entrance of the Smithsonian Castle. Buses will leave by 5 o'clock, preferably earlier than that, and they'll be leaving on a rolling basis. Unfortunately, I do have to say that any student who does not arrive to the Smithsonian Castle dismissal point by 5 p.m. may and most likely will have any upcoming 6th grade activities withheld. It is very important that you adhere to the timeframes. We have the buses for only a certain limited period of time. We can't afford to have one of the drivers go over hours. So we really need to adhere to these timeframes in order to make sure that we have a smooth and orderly trip. Once again, it's a wonderful trip, a wonderful annual opportunity, one of those memorable opportunities for both you and your child throughout the rest of their lifetime. It's really a nice tradition that our district provides. Have that conversation ahead of time with your child. I know that our homeroom teachers will be going over the different sites that they might see prior to the trip during their enrichment sessions. Have a conversation afterwards. Take a look at what you might want to see. It definitely is beneficial to outline the important museums and monuments that you might want to see. And some you might have to get tickets ahead of time. So definitely have that conversation. Be excited, but also prepared to go on the trip. We look forward to seeing you on the trip. And keep in mind, once again, doors open around 5 o'clock, but we ask that you be here by 5:30, 6 o'clock a.m. sharp dismissal. We expect to be at DC at 9:30, depending on traffic. We will be asking you to come back and meet up at the Smithsonian Castle outside that museum at 4:30 with a hopeful departure no later than 5 o'clock. And we do expect to get back here around 8:30 that night. So any questions that you might have, feel free to email me, call me, or reach out to your child's homeroom teacher. Thank you.